Good morning, everyone. In the last lecture, we have seen the cough. How does the different drugs act on preventing and treatment of cough? Now, the next topic in respiratory system we have is the bronchial asthma, and today we will see what is the drugs or different types of drugs which are useful in treatment of bronchial asthma. So what is basically bronchial asthma? It is a hyperresponsiveness of the tracheobronchial smooth muscles, that is the smooth muscles which are present in the trachea and the other respiratory tract, and hyperresponsiveness is due to the various stimuli, that is a variety of stimuli like allergens or dust, different types of allergens to which a particular individual is allergic. Also there occurs the narrowing of the ear tubes because of this hyperresponsiveness. Increased secretions is there, and mucosal edema and mucus plugging is there. All these tend to narrowing of the airway, and thus difficulty in breathing is faced by the patient of bronchial asthma. Now in this diagram we can see that the asthmatic bronchial and a normal bronchial. So in asthmatic bronchial you can clearly see that the lumen of the respiratory airway is narrowed because of the hypertrophy of the smooth muscles, and even the secretions, that is hypersecretion is there. So both these factors try to constrict the bronchial smooth muscles, and whereas the case is not seen with the normal bronchial. So there is the hyperresponsiveness of the respiratory tract due to the different types of allergen, which is like dust or smoke or any other pollen grain, and different types of other allergens also. So what are the symptoms which we see in bronchial asthma? These are dyspnea, that is difficulty in breathing, then the wheezing is there, and cough is there. So now here again we can see in this diagram how the pathology is there in the airway. In the first cross section of airway, that is figure B, we can see that is a normal airway. We can see clearly that the airway is properly patent. There is no constriction of smooth muscles and no presence of any secretions also. But as compared to the next diagram, that is C, which is the cross section during the asthma, we can see that the airway smooth muscles are thickened, and the there is hypertrophy of muscles, and even along with that, to add on, there is increased secretions into the airway. So all these factors contribute to the narrowing of the respiratory airways. Now what is asthma? Asthma is recognized to be a primarily inflammatory condition, that is inflammatory response to the any allergen, and the inflammation is because of underlying hyperreactivity. So what is etiopathogenesis? And allergic basis can be demonstrated in the adults and higher percentage of pediatric population. Now the different trigger factors can be like any infection, or different types of irritants, or pollution, dust, exercise. Then some people are also allergic to exposure to cold air also, and there can be a psychogenic factor also. So in the diagram we can see what are the different types of allergens that can trigger the attack of bronchial asthma. Now the mast cells that are present in the lungs, and different types of inflammatory cells also that contribute to the increase in inflammation are recruited from the blood at the site of inflammation as a result of initial reaction, and produce a multitude of mediators by following process. So in this diagram we can see the triggering factors like allergens or different types of irritants or viruses or exercise. They have an interaction with the antibodies that are present on the mast cells, and there is interaction between allergen and the IgE antibody present on the surface of the mast cell, and because of this there occurs the activation of the mast cells, and which helps to the degranulation of the mast cell, and the degranulation causes the release of the different inflammatory mediators like histamine, leukotrienes or cytokines, and these released inflammatory mediators can further cause the hyperactive response like bronchospasm or edema or airway obstruction, or there can be a chronic inflammation also, and because of this chronic inflammation there can be occurring a tissue remodeling of the airway also. So the release of mediators that are stored into the granules of the mast cells or the inflammatory cells like histamine, protease enzymes or TNF alpha. These are the mediators which are released immediately after an response to the allergen. After that, that is after few minutes, there occurs release of some phospholipids from the cell membrane or prostaglandins, leukotrienes or platelet activating factors. And after this, within hours of inflammation, there can be release of different interleukins and tumor necrosis factor alpha. So these are the different mediators that are released at different times, that is immediately, within few minutes and after few hours of the inflammatory response. Now moving towards the different drugs that will be helpful to treat the bronchial asthma. So we have different classes like bronchodilators. In bronchodilators, that means the drugs which will help in dilatation of the either larger airways or the terminal small airways, and in that we have beta 2 sympathomimetics like salbutamol, terbutaline, ambuterol or salmeterol. Whereas the next class which we have as a bronchodilator is the methylxanthines. Now methylxanthines, we have theophylline or aminophylline or even doxophylline also. The third class which we have as an bronchodilator is the anticholinergics, where the drugs like ipratropium bromide or tiotropium bromide are included. So the first class which we have seen was the bronchodilators. The second which we have is the leukotriene antagonist. So leukotriene was one of the inflammatory mediators, and the leukotriene antagonists are the montelukast and the zafirlukast. The next class is the mast cell stabilizers. This name itself will suggest that mast cells are prevented from degranulation, that is stabilization of mast cells will be there, and in that we have sodium chromoglycate and ketotifen. The next class is the corticosteroids. Corticosteroids, again we have the systemically acting corticosteroids and the inhalational corticosteroids. So in systemic we have hydrocortisone, prednisolone and other systemic steroids, whereas in inhalational there are beclomethasone, budesonide or fluticasone. So the corticosteroids are very important class of drugs for bronchial asthma. The next we have the anti-IgE antibody class, that is in that we have a monoclonal antibody, that is omalizumab. So these are the different types of instruments which we use for the inhalation of the drugs which we have seen till now, like the spacers or inhaler or the like meter-dose inhaler or the rotahalers, and this will be helpful for inhaling the bronchodilators or different types of drugs. Now first class, that is the sympathomimetics. So what are the sympathomimetics? These are the drugs which act on the beta 2 receptors present on the bronchial smooth muscles, and by dilatation of the airways through beta 2 receptors, how does it act? It causes increase in the cyclic AMP formation, and because of this increase in cyclic AMP, there occurs the relaxation of smooth muscles and further dilatation of the bronchial smooth muscles. So there will be increase in the or the widening of the lumen of the bronchial tree. So in sympathomimetic, these are the drugs that are the mainstay of treatment for the cases where there is reversible airway obstruction. Basically, asthma is a reversible airway obstruction, whereas in COPD there is no reversible airway obstruction. Now, it should be kept in mind that these drugs, that is sympathomimetics, should be used cautiously in hypertensives and ischemic heart disease patients. Okay, and these are the fastest acting bronchodilators when they are used by the inhaled route. Okay, the first drug among the bronchodilators, that is sympathomimetics, is the salbutamol. So salbutamol is a inhaled beta 2 agonist which is delivered mostly from the meter dose inhaler, and these meter dose inhalers produce bronchodilators within 5 minutes, and these actions last for 2 to 4 hours. That is, it is a short acting drug. Salbutamol is a short acting drug, and it is used to abort or terminate the acute attack of asthma. But whenever a patient is needing a prophylactic treatment or round the clock treatment, these are not the drug of choice. The salbutamol, which we have seen is a beta 2 agonist, has its own side effects like muscle tremors. When there is a systemic absorption of the drug, there occurs muscle tremors at the dose related side effect. Also, other side effects of sympathomimetic drugs will be palpitation, restlessness, nervousness, throat irritation because of the inhalation. Then ankle edema can also occur. There will also be hypokalemia and other side effects related to the beta 2 agonist. The next drug which we have is the salmeterol. Now, the salbutamol which we have seen was a short acting drug which was having its duration of action near about only for 2 to 4 hours. The salmeterol which we are having is a longer acting and selective beta 2 agonist, but it has a slow onset of action, and it is used by inhalation on a twice daily schedule for maintenance therapy or for nocturnal asthma. And this is not to be used for the acute symptoms because it has a slow onset of action. The next class which we have is the methylxanthines. So what are methylxanthines? These are not the first line drugs, and nowadays these are only restricted to the patients of COPD, that is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease patients, and selected cases of asthma as an adjuvant medication. Also, the drugs which we have are the theophylline or aminophylline, and caffeine, which commonly drink coffee, is also one of methylxanthines. So what is the mechanism of action of these methylxanthines? These methylxanthines causes the inhibition of phosphodiesterase enzyme, which is responsible for degradation of cyclic nucleotides, that too intracellularly. So there will be increased concentration of cyclic AMP or cyclic GMP. So the concentration of cyclic nucleotides is increased, and because of these increase in concentrations of these cyclic AMPs, there will be bronchodilation, or there will be cardiac stimulation and vasodilation. So, but one thing you should keep in mind with these methylxanthines is that they cause the vasoconstriction in the cranial vessels, and so because of these property of these methylxanthines, it is also useful in the cases of migraine. So in other vessels it causes vasodilation, but vasoconstriction in the cranial vessels. And the basic important action which we require here is the bronchodilation because of the increased levels of cyclic AMP. Other actions on different what we can say different systems are like it causes increase or alertness in the CNS. On cardiac system, we can say that it has a mixed or variable or unpredictable response, like because of vasomotor center stimulation and cardiac stimulation, it causes a rise in BP. But exactly opposite what happens is that because of vagal stimulation and direct vasodilatation, it may tend to lower the BP. So there is a mixed or variable response on cardiac system. Whereas in kidney it causes mild diuresis, and in skeletal muscle it causes increase in the contractile power. So one more action with methylxanthines is that it causes blockade of adenosine receptor. Now these adenosine is responsible for bronchoconstriction and increase in what we can say increase in secretions. So these actions of adenosine are blocked by the methylxanthines. Here in this diagram we can see that with increase in plasma concentration of these methylxanthines like theophylline and all, they have a very low therapeutic range. After that we can see the toxicity of these drugs, like with increased concentration there will be restlessness or tremors. Again with further increase in concentration there will be delirium, worsening of the cardiac status, then increased muscle tone, and finally there will be convulsion, shock and death of the patient. The next class is the anticholinergic. So what are anticholinergic drugs? That we can say that those are the atropine like drugs. So atropinic drugs cause the bronchodilation. How? By blocking the muscarinic receptors, that is M3 type of receptors that are located on the bronchial smooth muscles, and because of this there will be dilatation of the bronchi. And one more important thing to be kept in mind is that they act primarily on the larger airways and where there is vagal innervation. So amongst anticholinergics we have ipratropium bromide and tiotropium bromide. So what is ipratropium bromide? It is a short acting where the duration of action is only for 4 to 6 hours. And inhaled anticholinergic bronchodilators is the ipratropium bromide, while tiotropium bromide is a long acting which has the duration of action near about for 24 hours. But both are less efficacious as compared to the directly acting beta 2 sympathomimetics, because they are the bronchodilators of the choice in COPD but not in asthma. The reflex cholinergic tone appears to be major reversible component of airway obstruction in COPD. That's why they are the drug of choice in COPD. Also what we can say that why they are less efficacious than beta 2 sympathomimetics, because they have a slow onset of action, and the beta 2 agonists are the fastest acting drugs. So the next class which we have is the leukotriene antagonist. So the different inflammatory mediators like cytokines and leukotrienes are there. So we have the cysteine leukotrienes, which are the important mediators for bronchial asthma, and the receptors which we are having the antagonist is for the cysteine leukotriene 1 receptor, and in that we have the montelukast and the zapvirlukast. So what do these drugs do? They are the drugs which will be helpful for preventing the bronchoconstriction, decreasing the mucus secretion, increase vascular permeability, and recruitment of eosinophils will also be prevented. The episodes of exacerbations of asthma will also be reduced by use of these drugs. And these montelukast and zapvirlukast are the drugs which are indicated for the prophylactic therapy for the cases of mild to moderate asthma, and that too as an alternative for inhaled glucocorticoids. But in cases of severe asthma, they can have an additive effect along with the inhaled steroids, because they permit the reduction in the dose of steroids that we use, and also we need for rescue of beta 2 inhaled agonist. So what montelukast and zapvirlukast are indicated for prophylactic therapy, and they are good alternatives for inhaled glucocorticoids. In spite of having low efficacy, they obviate the need for inhaled steroids and may become more acceptable in children. So the next class which we have is the mast cell stabilizers. So what does the name suggest? That they will stabilize the mast cells and prevent the degranulation of the mast cells, thus preventing the release of the inflammatory mediators like histamine and other inflammatory mediators. So in that we have sodium chromoglycate, and in the diagram we can see there will be interaction between antigen and antibody, and further reactions will cause the degranulation, and these will be prevented by these mast cell stabilizers. Next is the corticosteroids. So basically you should keep in mind that corticosteroids are not the bronchodilators, but they benefit. How do they cause their benefit? They cause the inhibition of inflammatory cytokine production, and the infiltration of eosinophils and lymphocytes in the lungs is prevented. They also reduce the bronchial hyperreactivity, then reduce the mucosal edema, and also suppress the inflammatory response by antigen antibody reaction, which is triggered by other allergic stimuli. They improve the airflow, reduce asthma exacerbations, and also prevent the remodeling of the airways because of the chronic inflammation. They retard the disease progression. So inhaled steroids, we have the beclomethasone, dipropionate, or budesonide, fluticasone, and these are the glucocorticoids with high topical activity and low systemic effect. So it is a very important point for the topical drug like inhaled steroids, which will have a least systemic activity, which will be responsible for preventing the systemic side effects of the glucocorticoids. And currently inhaled steroids are not considered necessary for patients with mild and episodic asthma. They are indicated in cases of persistent asthma when beta-2 agonists are required almost daily, or when the disease is only episodic. So what are the adverse effects of the inhaled steroids? Because the local side effects will be hoarseness of voice, then dysphonia, there will be sore throat, and asymptomatic or symptomatic oropharyngeal candidiasis because of the deposition of that drug into the oral mucosa. You see, this is the oral candidiasis due to the inhaled steroids, and this can be minimized by using of spacer and also gargling after every dose to wash off the drug that was deposited in the oral and the pharyngeal mucosa. So this will prevent the recurrent oral candidial infection. What is the fate of inhaled corticosteroids? So when we inhale through mouth, the drug gets deposited into the pharynx and then lungs, and there will be complete absorption into the lung. Some of the drug may get absorbed into the systemic circulation, and we can see the systemic side effects of the drug. If the drug is swallowed, there will be absorption from gut also, and because of this absorption, again we can see the systemic side effects of the drug. Now why do we prefer the inhaled glucocorticoids is that they have either a high local effect, or the second thing is that the high first pass metabolism is there. Because of that we will see less systemic side effects of the inhaled corticosteroids as compared to the oral corticosteroids. So what will be the systemic effects of long term inhaled corticosteroids? Are clinically relevant only when the doses of the inhaled steroids are used more than 600 micrograms per day. Now the significant one are the mood changes, osteoporosis, growth retardation in children because they act on the growth plate of the bones, then bruising or hyperglycemia. There will be pituitary adrenal suppression also as the systemic side effects, but when there is long term use. Now the next class of drug is the IgE antibody drugs which act on these IgE antibodies. Now the mast cells have different antibodies, and in that we have the IgE antibodies present on the surface of the mast cells. And when there occurs a interaction between the antigen, that is different type of stimuli or the antigen which is there in the patient, there will be interaction between these IgE antibodies and the antigen, and these antigen antibody reaction will be prevented by these anti-IgE antibody drugs. So in that we have omalizumab. So it is a humanized monoclonal antibody against the IgE receptor. So but one important thing is that it is very expensive, and it is reserved only for the cases of resistant asthma where other drugs cannot be helpful, and also for the patients who require frequent hospitalization. So using of these drugs will prevent the further inflammatory response, but only the cost is much higher as compared to other drugs of asthma. Now moving towards the treatment depending upon the type of asthma. So what will be the choice of treatment? We will see firstly for the mild episodic asthma. So what is mild episodic asthma? The symptoms are less, and there will be either only once daily attack of asthma, and in between the attacks the patient is totally normal. So here we can use inhaled short acting beta 2 agonist, which will cause the dilatation of bronchial smooth muscles at onset of each episode. And since asthma is intermediate in mild episodic asthma, it does not require the continuous prophylactic therapy. That means continuous supply of this inhaled beta 2 agonist is not required. Other type of asthma is the seasonal asthma. You must all be familiar with this seasonal asthma, or you can have seen your friends or any relatives with this seasonal asthma. That is, in particular season these patients get exacerbated with the attacks of asthma. So in such cases, start regular low dose of inhaled steroids like budesonide or fluticasone, and along with that chromoglycate can be given for 3 to 4 weeks when there is before the anticipated seasonal attack, and we have to continue these drugs, either inhaled steroids or chromoglycate, till 3 to 4 weeks after the season is over. So this is the seasonal asthma, and treat individual asthma episode with inhaled and short acting beta 2 agonist also when there is attack of the asthma. The next type of asthma is the mild chronic or the persistent type of asthma with occasional in between exacerbations of the asthma, where there is symptoms are once daily and subnormal ventilatory performance is shown by the patient. So what do? Use regular low dose inhaled steroids. That is, inhalational steroids are used but at low dose, and alternatively we can use chromoglycate or oral theophylline, that is methylxanthines, and chromoglycate is a mast cell stabilizer. So both these can be alternatively used with inhaled corticosteroids, but these are less effective as compared to the steroids. And the episode treatment with inhaled short acting beta 2 agonist is but obviously suggested. So what drugs we use in mild chronic asthma is either firstly inhaled corticosteroids at low doses, and alternative to this, if the patient is not able to take the steroids because of other problems, we can use chromoglycate or oral theophylline also, inhaled chromoglycate. And for the acute attack which is there, we need to use the inhaled short acting beta 2 agonist. The next type is the moderate type of asthma, that too with frequent exacerbation. So previously we had seen that there is occasional exacerbation, but in moderate asthma where there is frequent exacerbation, that is attacks affect the activity of the person and which occurs more than one episode per day or mild baseline symptoms are always present. So in such cases, that is in moderate asthma, try to increase the dose of inhaled steroids, and along with inhaled steroids we need to use the inhaled long acting beta 2 agonist. Whereas in previously moderate asthma, we have seen that we used beta 2 agonist which were short acting, but now when there is frequent exacerbation, we need to use an increased dose of inhaled steroids along with long acting beta 2 agonist. So both will prevent, the steroids will prevent the inflammatory response, and the steroids beta 2 agonist will help to dilate the bronchial airway, smooth muscles. Next is the severe type of asthma. Now what is severe asthma? There is continuous symptoms present in the patient, and it causes, because of these continuous symptoms, there will be limitation of his day-to-day activities, and frequent exacerbations and hospitalization will also be seen. So in such cases, what do? We give more higher dose of inhaled corticosteroids through spacers. Along with that, we give the long acting beta 2 agonist, and that too twice daily. So this will help to reduce the exacerbations and the hospitalization. Along with that, additional treatment with one or more of the following can be given, that is with steroids and inhaled long acting beta 2 agonist. We can give leukotriene antagonist when needed, or sustained release oral methylxanthine like theophylline can be given, or inhaled ipratropium bromide can also be given along with the main stay of treatment, that is steroids and long acting beta 2 agonist. And rescue treatment can be given along with short acting inhaled beta 2 agonist. In patients those who are not adequately controlled or those need frequent emergency care, we need to start them with oral steroid therapy. The next condition is the status asthmaticus or the refractory asthma, and any patient of asthma has the potential to develop the acute severe asthma, which will be life threatening. So in cases of status asthmaticus or the refractory asthma, what do we need to give is firstly the hydrocortisone 100 milligram intravenously stat, that is the systemic steroids are needed in such cases, and then the systemic steroids are followed by a dose of lowering the dose, that is 100 to 200 milligrams 4 to 8 hourly. Infusion may take up to 6 hours to act. After that, we need to give nebulized salbutamol 2.5 to 5 milligrams with ipratropium bromide 0.5 milligrams, intermittent inhalations with oxygen also. That is firstly systemic steroids, then nebulized salbutamol and ipratropium bromide should be given. Next is high flow humidified oxygen inhalation. Thank you.